Hi, in this video I want to talk about this, which is a stopcock. This is a BS 1010-2 and it's a 1/2 inch stopcock, which means it fits onto the 15mm pipes. So what I want to do in this video is take this apart and look at the various components inside. There's various components and I want to take it apart, and then we can, there's the full majesty of the diagram I've got, the schematic, and we'll talk about just how it works. There's a thing here which is this area is called the packing box, and here you've got the packing nut, and here's what they call the bonnet nut, although the bonnet of a normal tap tends to go over the whole thing. And there's a spindle which goes here, which is connected to the handle, and that goes to this core, which is a washer. These wear out, and depending on what you're using, it could be normally on or normally off. The BS 1010-2 covers both stopcocks and garden taps. The difference between this, for a garden tap, it would come, this part here, which is the output, would point slightly downwards, and generally you would have it off most of the time and then you switch it on when you need it. And with a stopcock it tends to be on most of the time and you switch it off when you need it, or to do some maintenance or whatever. Let's take this apart. This is actually refurbished. This has been in the house between 25-30 years. Unfortunately it's just gone faulty. Now I've cleaned it, so all of the things that you see here is slightly fake, in the sense that this is absolutely not what it was like, and it was a real tough one to get apart, but I've loosened everything up so I can show you it disassembled. Let's take this off. These are the compression fittings and the nuts that go onto these screws to actually compress it onto the pipe. There's a screw in here. In this particular case it's a steel screw, and there's a handle. And so I'm going to take this nut off here, and I'm going to take this part out. When I took this bonnet nut off, it was really put in hard, and I needed a vise, and I put a lot of force in to get it apart. Not like that. It was in a vise, and I put my knee into it, and short of screaming, I even managed to break the vise. Well, not break the vise, but dent it. So it's not as easy to do as that. I'll take this part out, like that. This is a fibre. The modern ones, they tend to use nylon now. This thing in here is the core, and there's a gasket. That's the thing that seals onto that seat, which I don't know if you can see. Let's see if we can get some light in there. You can see the seat. So this is just a single piece drilled. So it's drilled that way, drilled this way, and drilled this way. And then this is cored and drilled as well. So that is there. This thing here is the core. If you look here, that's this bit here. And again, this is something which was not easy to remove. And I had to, you can see that this is actually torn. That was not torn. That appeared to be kind of glued onto this thing, and during the refurbishment process it just fell apart, so I'll put that there. Where should I put that? I should put that here. And then this is probably the part that most people are interested in. This is the bonnet nut and the spindle. I'm going to turn it this way to start with and pull it, and I'm going to push it out, and you can see what's actually in the packing box. I don't know what this is. It's often called PTFE. Some people say it's graphite. I don't think it's graphite, because graphite does not expand when you crush it. And then we can take this apart here. There you can see the various parts. There it goes. Handle. There's this thing here, which is the gland. This, which is the black bit here, which is essentially crushed, and it makes a seal between the bonnet and the spindle. And this part goes, the spindle goes up and down, and you really need to have this. I've seen people suggest that you use grips on this, but if you ever want to take it apart in this particular fashion, which I would say you never need to, the only thing you would ever really need to do is take this out. You can buy these as a unit, or you can buy this thing separately. In my particular case, now I've wrecked it, if I tap it, it's just gone really, it's really hard. And when I pull this apart, the whole thing, it just came apart in what looked like soot. So my hands were covered and there was so much of it. I thought this is totally disintegrated, but you can still see there's quite a lot of it left. And considering it's something which is only used fairly infrequently, it's got quite a severe indentation. I'm going to change it for this. Now, I have a pack of these somewhere. I've got no idea where. These usually come with silicone hoses, and I'm going to put this in this thing because it's pretty much identical in size, as you can see, and just try it. Now, everything that you have on these things should be WRAS approved. You can see this here, it's WRAS approved. That's the Water Regulation Advisory Service. This is silicone grease, and that means generally it's food grade, which means if you ingest this by accident, if you get it on the skin, it's not going to harm you or cause reactions. It's important that anything that goes on the portable water supply has that accreditation. And this is nice and squishy. This is silicone rubber. There was no silicone rubber probably when this was fitted. I'm going to just reseat this, so let's quickly pull this apart and use the reseating tool. So you can see with this, the threads are very similar. They're not identical, but they're close enough. So I'm going to use the small cutting blade, which you can see is about the same as that. Oops, put this on there. So I'm going to take this, I'm just going to throw this in. Make sure it goes in. Won't go in all the way because the threads are slightly out, but just to show you what the reseating tool, this is the seat, and I just want to make sure that the seat is absolutely flat. Now this, let's just quickly look at the seat before I grind it. I don't know if you can see in there, but the seat itself, the groove that you can see sticking up here is like this, and I just want to take a little bit off the top to make sure it's absolutely flat, because there is a slight discoloration on there and I don't know, and this didn't seal, which is the reason why I took it out in the first place. I don't want to make it like square like this. I want it to keep it like that, but just make sure that it's absolutely flat. So we'll put this in. There is an art to doing this. It isn't just, you know, you just hit it with as much force as possible. Let's put this in. Let's make sure I find the thread properly. There you go. So that puts this in, and I just want to add a bit of force with my thumb, and then I'm going to turn this, and you can feel it cutting. If you're cutting, generally you push down, turn and release, because if you just hit it, you cause a sharp cut. As you turn it, it will bite in, and then as you stop, then you leave another ding on the other side, and you don't want any of that. You want it to be a smooth cut. So I'm pushing down with my thumb, and then I'm just rotating it with my finger here. Let's see what we have. We can see that that's not flat at all. That's slightly twisted. So I'm going to have to go further with that. So you can see that this edge on this side is going in, but this edge on that side isn't really cutting in. So it's just slightly lopsided. Yeah, you can see it's now nice and even all the way in, and it's shiny all the way through. So I've had to take more out than I really wanted to, but now I know that's absolutely flat. So we can now start to reassemble this. You can actually buy this as a whole piece, or you can buy this. Poundland used to do them as a little kit, including the fibre washer. I'm going to use some of this pen white on this, because where you see it goes in, this screw thread, this is where you'll get corrosion here, and this is when you turn it and it's very difficult to turn. That's where the corrosion has come in. Now some of these are slightly different design, where they've got the gasket down here and the threads up here, which is a better design, but unfortunately that's not what this is. This is the much older design, so I'm going to put some of this pen white on here. This is silicone grease. You only need a absolutely tiny amount on this, and this is going to help stop corrosion building up on this. So it's just going to hopefully interfere with corrosion build-up. And then we'll put this in here. This isn't to make it smoother or run better. This is purely down to helping to stop the corrosion build-up. Not corrosion build-up, but more scale that gets in there. So you can see it's like that, because this will be normally open. This thing here is the packing, and this is almost an interference fit. So I need to be very careful with this, because this fits almost perfectly on this thing. It's quite hard. You can hear from that noise that in actual fact that's metal. That's whatever this thing is. Now I'm going to put this on top to push it down. I'm just going to screw it back in like that. That drops this down into this area here, away from these threads. So now push this on, that's it. And just as this way, yeah, up, right. So this back up again. Push that. What is you? Just a little bit of this side of there. So this one shaft. And do some of this. Again, this isn't for freeway, this is just going to interfere with any scale that's, because I'm in a very hard scale water. You'll see there's very little scale on this. That's because I've cleaned it. This is not what it looked like. It looked more like this. This is another one that actually came from my house. This is probably 40 to 50 years old. Unfortunately, even though it is the same BS 1010-2, which came out in 1973, unfortunately, I've got no idea. Well, it's more of a wedge. It's not like this, which is like an olive. And the threads are completely different on this type. So I don't think I'm going to be able to recover this one. And if you look inside there, this is much more like what this was like when I took it off. And this was so horrible, I had to even cut it off the pipe. I couldn't get the ends off at the time. So same thing I'm going to do here. I'm just going to put a tiny amount of this stuff in. And again, hopefully that's going to interfere with the corrosion, if there is any. For something like this, I might use petroleum jelly, which is also food grade. I'm going to put this on here. This expands the water. As I said, if it was nylon, then that would be enough. So I'm going to put the core in, like so, and I'm going to just screw this into here. Just back this out again. Get this just tightened up. Is it stuck? That's all the way down. This is all the way back again. Put this on. Just going to do this thing up. So that's, as you can see, it's only hand tight, and this feels quite nice actually. And so when undoing this, you would just do it backwards like this until you got to the top. And notice the travel on this, it's quite a long way. I would do it back one full turn, but some people say quarter of a turn or half a turn, but because the travel on this is so long, take this out, and we'll put that, zero that, and slightly show on this, so that's 20 equals 26, we'll zero that, okay. That's just touching, let's see how far this goes. So that's 9.63 millimeters. So that's a long way there's travel. So as you can see, where this would leak is generally, if it's leaking within the system, so in other words you close it off, is this point here. And if it's leaking out of the top here, is this point here. Now I've seen ones and the videos that seem to have come out from Australia, and they seem to have the O-rings up here in the stem. So if you take this part of the stem, instead of having a packing nut like this which crushes whatever it is in the packing box, it just uses these O-rings, but they have to go up and down the inner part of the shaft, which is much more like a standard tap. My experience is actually just a few of these, that this core part may be fixed. And actually that's another thing which is quite an interesting point within the core itself. If I just open this again, you'll notice that it's kind of pointy shaped, like that. And it's metal to metal fixing, and if you push down on this, it rotates quite easily. So when this goes onto the seat, this seat here, as soon as it hits the seat, it's going to stop rotating, and the driving force which is going to happen here is metal to metal, and it's just so weak in comparison to the turning force here that it will just remain stationary as it pushes down. So this will not spin on the seat, which is something you do not want it to do. Another thing is, as you can hear with this one, this core is loose. So if the water goes backwards, and there's a little arrow on this, then it can actually pull this down. So these little red arrows show the water going up into this, then travelling round down and out this way. And if it goes the other way, it's very likely to just pull this down because it's loose. Now, one of the things I haven't seen is if you want this to be permanently on, so that it's always kind of dropped down, you would have to have it face up or facing with this spindle upwards. Or if you see the non-return valves, which generally use the same body, or can use the same body, they've got a little spring inside. Obviously this doesn't have a spring, but you could use gravity for it, and that would make sure that if there was any return, it would just stop it off. But in this particular case, I have it like this in my house, so as soon as it's pushed out, there has to be a certain amount of water flow before it would capture this and push it down, and if it was upside down then again it would have to be even faster for it to move in. But I have heard people say, and you can hear it again, moving about inside. So if I turn it down like this, but if I open it up, you hear the core moving around. So that's this part, which is just showing a schematic of the stopcock, the BS 1010-2, and hopefully I'll show you a bit of a practical on the operation of this, and also what happens if you have it on backwards. Okay, well, thank you for watching this part.